Can you believe that 2020 is almost over? If you're planning an end-of-year trip for the holidays, there are some travel restrictions to know about. Much of the world is inaccessible for leisure travel, but it's still possible to leave home and sightsee. Only essential travel reasons may be exempt from various travel restrictions. New York has some of the strictest travel restrictions in the contiguous U.S. 48 states. Most travelers, including New York residents out of state for at least 24 hours, will need to quarantine for 14 days or take 2 qualifying diagnostic tests. Specifically, travelers entering New York State from a non-contiguous state, U.S. territory or CDC Level 2 or Level 3 country, will need to provide proof of a valid negative diagnostic test upon arrival to the Empire State. This test must be taken within 3 days before arriving in New York. The traveler must then quarantine for the first 3 days and take a second test on the 4th day. The follow-up test must have a negative result to waive the rest of the 14-day quarantine. If you don't have a qualifying negative test result before arriving in New York, you will need to quarantine for the full 14 days. Travelers and residents from bordering states like New Jersey and Connecticut can be exempt from these quarantine and testing rules. However, travelers that only leave New York for less than 24 hours will need to complete the Traveler Health Form and take a diagnostic test 4 days after returning. New Jersey strongly encourages a 14-day self-quarantine for those entering from any state or territory outside the immediate region. While a self-quarantine is optional, compliance is expected. You do not have to quarantine if you arrive from New York, Connecticut, Delaware and Pennsylvania. Most travelers and returning residents will need to self-quarantine when entering Connecticut. Travelers will need to complete a Traveler Health Form or face a potential $500 fine. You will need to self-quarantine when you arrive from a state under these conditions. The list of impacted states updates on Tuesdays. As of December 1, 2020, Hawaii is the only non-contiguous state or territory that waives the self-quarantine. It's possible to waive the quarantine with qualifying negative diagnostic tests. The first test can be taken up to 72 hours before arriving in Connecticut or after arriving. The negative test results will need to be emailed or faxed to the Commissioner of Public Health. Pennsylvania strengthened its travel restrictions on November 25, 2020. Travelers and returning residents over age 11 must quarantine for 14 days or show proof of a negative COVID-19 test. These restrictions do not apply to residents only leaving the Commonwealth for less than 24 hours. Traveling to Pennsylvania for essential reasons like work, medical treatment and court orders are exempt as well.